Foul. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is one back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
Hi, everyone, and welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno. Joining me tonight, Anthony Witrado. We didn't get any sort of clinch scenario. Blake and Scott drew that straw Thursday night, and we had a great show. I was kind of in and out in the chat with everybody. But Anthony, still plenty to discuss tonight and a lot to sort of celebrate with, I think Shohei Ohtani. I don't know if you've heard of this new kind of up-and-coming talent the Dodgers have on their roster.
Yeah. Pretty good signing.
Yeah, worth the $2 million. Worth the $2 million, right?
Yeah. He's running down the 55 club now. I still think 60 might be a little too far away, but all of a sudden the Triple Crown is back in play. With this tear that he's been on this month. So that batting average keeps rising. An outside shot at it, I think, but just another reason to keep people paying attention over the weekend. This guy's just an amazing ball player. He's just simply amazing.
Yeah. And we're going to get into a lot more of the Ohtani discussion. He's one of our planned segments tonight. We want to thank everybody who's joining us live right now on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. If you are on YouTube, please remember to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, all that good stuff. You can stay up to date for when we post new videos, for when we go live with these episodes. I know for the most part we have been on a pretty planned schedule, but sometimes with now the postseason coming up, if there's things that come out, whether it's roster planning or construction, we're going to discuss the rotation and what that looks like later on tonight. We'll kind of do impromptu shows, and if you have your notifications on, you'll definitely be alerted to that and you won't miss it. If you're listening on podcasts, thank you for that. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us there as well. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you like to do that. Okay, so before we get to Ohtani, because certainly he deserves to be discussed, but I think we also need to sort of recognize the Dodgers pitching staff tonight. Heading into this series, the plan, as of even I think 2 or 3 days ago, Dave Roberts had said they were going to do a bullpen game. And obviously before clinching the NL West against the Padres, the thought of a bullpen game at Coors Field with the NL West still potentially up for grabs, I think seemed a little concerning. That ended up being a moot point, but Dodgers went into tonight. Ryan Brazier started as an opener for the 4th time. It was his first time allowing a run. He had thrown 3 scoreless innings in that role heading into tonight. I think the standout from the pitching staff is Ben Kasparias. He went 4 1/3, allowed 2 runs. Only one of them was earned, but he really, ate up kind of that bulk role that the Dodgers typically like to have when they go to these bullpen games. And it was his first sort of extended opportunity. We've seen him in smaller stints, shorter appearances with the Dodgers. But what did you see out of Kasparias tonight? Just sort of, I don't want to diminish what he did or belittle it by saying he ate up innings, but that was a key role for the Dodgers, and he sort of has their bullpen now in a good state, good standing going forward.
Yeah, no, it was a solid outing. Look, I think given the state of the rotation going into the playoffs, these innings matter. Those bulk innings really do count for something now, because I think it's for him sort of something of a final audition to possibly take that role going into the NLDS. I think that if they decide that they have to go to a bullpen game during that series, I think he gives them some confidence now that, look, we can start out the way we want to, and then give him the bulk, and so a bullpen game still ends up being where hopefully you can still save some of those arms in case you have to go into, let's say, a game 5 or something like that. So I thought it was solid. I thought it was confidence building. I think not just for him, but I think for the organization to say, okay, we might have the semblance here of a plan, the concepts of a plan, if you will, if we have to lean on a bullpen game. And so, I think good vibes all around on that, because it gives everybody, I think, a little more solid foundation to say, you know what, we can turn to that and we'll be fine.
Yeah, and actually, I sort of misspoke a little bit. Ben Kasparias' first game, his MLB debut was 1 inning. He pitched against the Rockies. Coincidentally, it was the Sunday game when Yamamoto had his short start and gave them 3 innings. So tonight was his longest, but he went 3 innings last time out.
Yeah.
And I remember after that game, Dave Roberts said, aside from Shohei Ohtani, Ben Kasperius was the MVP of that game because of what he provided them. And so to your point, he's now had 2 consecutive, encouraging appearances. And we're going to get into the NLDS rotation, but the pitching staff very much is, as a whole, is sort of in flux with, Brusdar Graterol going on the IL earlier this week. Like, he's now out for the NLDS. And so there is an opportunity. Another pitcher that I know is a little bit of a lightning rod, but who could factor in is Joe Kelly. He went 1 1/3 tonight. He's, looked a little bit better since returning. And I know he spoke with our friends at the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast with Rob Bradford and mentioned that he feels like he's just healthier at this point than he was earlier in the season. So I know fans have been down on Kelly a lot because he has struggled and he's been inconsistent, but it's not, I think it's also fair to say that if he can, get things sort of ironed out for the playoffs, like, he does become an important piece for the Dodgers because, like you said, we don't really know what the rotation is going to give them. So you need like every single relief pitcher you have to pitch well.
Yeah, definitely. We kind of always knew as long as he was healthy that he was probably going to be a part of this bullpen come the playoffs. Even when he was going through the struggles, he's a guy that, this organization really does like to lean on veteran experience, good and bad. I think you sometimes it hurts them. Sometimes it works out. It works out well. But I think for Kelly, they trust him in those situations. I don't think they're going to give him the ball necessarily in a 1-run game in the 7th inning. I don't think that's the role they want to carve out for him. But, he could end up getting high leverage kind of 5th, 6th inning, hitters. And so it's nice to hear him say that. But I think everyone in the chat and everybody who's watching us or listening to us would agree that, as soon as he has to come in a situation like that, we start sweating watching it. But, I think with that understanding, you just hope that he can go into the playoffs looking well. So, they may give him another tune-up here or two over the weekend, but I think we kind of know what we're getting. We just hope that the run prevention is there with Kelly.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm seeing, another name, Daniel Hudson. He also pitched tonight.
Yeah.
Scoreless inning. He did walk a batter, but scoreless inning to finish out, obviously with a huge lead at that point.
What are your feelings on him right now, Matt? How do you feel about Hudson getting the ball in big spots?
He's low on my list right now. I think he has the potential to get back up there. Earlier in the season, I trusted him. He's been around. He's obviously a veteran. He's pitched big games before. But at this point, especially what we saw from Blake Trinan against the Padres, he's ahead of him. I think Evan Phillips, we've seen enough. He's certainly ahead of him. Obviously, to me, Kopech is kind of the de facto closer, and so he's also ahead. So, I mean, those are 3 right-handers that definitely I'm going to before I even think about Daniel Hudson. I feel like, am I blanking on anybody else? Joe Kelly is not. Kelly and Hudson are sort of in the same bucket where I could see it going either way with one of them. But I mean, Kelly is certainly trending. It's a small sample size, but he's trending, I think, a little bit better than Hudson is as we finish the regular season. So I would possibly give him the nod. I think I covered the majority of the high leverage righties. If I'm forgetting anybody, I apologize.
Yeah, I just hope that Dave doesn't fall in love with him in those late inning high leverage roles. Because I'm with you. The confidence I have in him is it's pretty thin right now. He just looks tired. He really does. We've talked about phantom IL stints on this show a bunch for obvious reasons because like everyone's hurt. But it might have been wise to give him one, at some point in December. I'm sorry, it's September. But yeah, I think just he looks like he's tired and he's had to carry a heavy load. He's been a guy who's been mostly available all season, and he started off really well. I think there was some question about what his role would be coming into the season, and he solidified that pretty early on, and for a good portion of the year. But the last month or so, maybe even a little longer, he's just looked a little fatigued. The command hasn't been there. Looks like the finishing stuff really hasn't been there, and the stuff that he does leave over the middle of the plate has been getting hit hard. And so, yeah, putting him in high leverage situations in big games like that, it's a little scary. And I think what makes him and Kelly a little you just not sure about them, not because of their performance, but like where they might fit into a game, is because of the way the Dodgers are using Evan Phillips. He's sort of that fireman relief ace type of role.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he's got his shoes on anytime from like the 5th inning to the 8th inning at this point. And if you have to use him in the 5th inning, the 6th inning, that might leave Dave, in his options in his mind, maybe. There may be other guys who might be available who, fans would want to see before, but it might go to Kelly or Hudson in those later innings because Phillips has been used.
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, that ties back to the unfortunate state of the starting pitching, which I know we've discussed throughout the year because of the injuries seemingly were never ending this season, unfortunately, for the Dodgers. And we'll get into kind of the NLDS rotation and how that's sort of looking. But yeah, I'm seeing a lot of comments that Kelly won't be on the playoff roster, Hudson won't be. One of those two is definitely going to be on the playoff roster at minimum, if not both. Yeah. I think, maybe Edgardo Henriquez enters the conversation. Dave Roberts hasn't ruled out that possibility, but I don't know, like with how late he's come up, I'm not sure if there's going to be enough of a showing from him for the Dodgers to do something like that, unless, to your point, if they truly also believe that Daniel Hudson is just gassed and maybe he needs, the NLDS off to sort of reset. They did give him about a week break earlier. Was it early September or late August?
Yeah, I want to say it was in September. But I mean, I don't think it was enough.
I agree.
And Henriquez has looked good from what we've seen. My concern with him is two things. One, the control. And that those lights get brighter, that stage gets bigger, and that leverage gets a lot heavier. Come the playoffs. Not that I don't think any of us can say he can or can't handle that at this point, but I think we wanted to see a little more from him. And the other concern I have is that if they put him into a game in Colorado, over the weekend here to say like, okay, show us one more time, we're going to sort of judge you here and see where you might fit in the playoff roster, is that the baseball doesn't do the same thing in that altitude. Good and point. Obviously we know the kind of, amusement park ballpark that they have just because of where it sits. And so if he doesn't have as impressive an outing as he had earlier in the week, I hope that isn't so much held against him because of the circumstances that he would be pitching in that, in that situation. But I personally think if you bring him up this late, you're doing it for a reason. Give him a shot. I think it's worth the gamble there to put him on the NLDS roster and see what he can give you.
Yeah, that's fair. The beauty of all this is the Dodgers have technically more than a week as we're recording this, because game 1 of the NLDS isn't until October 5th, which is a Saturday, and so the Dodgers don't need to finalize their roster decision until that morning. And I assume we'll hear from Dave Roberts throughout next week that, yes, I think on the position player, it's pretty much set. Andy Pages looks like he's secure, both through his play and through Dave Roberts saying
absolutely
that he's on the roster. So I think we will, hear from Dave a lot throughout next week of, yes, we're deciding between the final reliever or two, that type of thing. And maybe some of that will be predicated on who the Dodgers end up playing in the NLDS, which is a complete mess right now. But we'll get into some of that a little bit later. We have our first super chat. Larry, I apologize. We were a little slower in getting to this than we usually do. He said, would a rivalry exist if Machado wasn't on the Padres roster? That's an interesting question. I hadn't necessarily thought of it this way. Well, first, let me back up. Do you view Is it a rivalry with the Padres at this point?
Yeah, I think it is. They've beaten each other in the playoffs, so yeah, I think that it's fair to label it as such. Um, to answer the question, uh, I would say I say no, but I say it for a different reason, not just because Machado has played on both teams and all of that. I say it because he was really the first pillar for AJ Preller in building this roster into what it's become. And if they don't sign him, I don't know what this team looks like. Eric Hosmer obviously wasn't it, right? Like, they've made some big name signings that have not panned out, but Machado's has, obviously. And so, obviously Tatis is a homegrown guy, so he would have been there anyway. But if Machado's not there, or if he didn't work out, you don't know what direction the franchise goes. Maybe they deal Tatis before he becomes a big star and make another run at somebody that's a veteran. You just don't know how these things happen. But I think that it is a rivalry, and I think it exists. A big reason it's there is because of Manny Machado, and it's because he was the start of what they've built now in San Diego.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I agree with you. I think it has become a rivalry at this point. If there's like tiers of rivalries, it's not quite at the level of the Dodgers Giants, just because I think there's a ton of history there.
Yeah, it doesn't have the history, right? But it's the new rivalry.
But there's certainly, I think, plenty of animosity, certainly between the fan bases. That we saw a lot of it this past week. We see it throughout the regular season when the Dodgers and Padres match up. Excuse me. We got a bunch of it when the Padres eliminated from the Dodgers in the NLDS. A bunch of their fans joined our live stream after that game. Was it 4? I think game 4 that the Dodgers lost and they were sent home. And I was in Petco, so I didn't have to deal with it. But I heard from Jeff after the fact that the comments were just a complete mess. And so I agree it is a rivalry. I agree with you that, and Larry's point that Machado is certainly a driving force behind it. I think it would still be one, but maybe not as like intense or as crazy as it is. Because like you said, like who knows what direction the Padres franchise would sort of be in and what state. Like that's what makes it the rivalry, right? Like
right.
Before, go ahead.
To your point, if they didn't have him, it would still be something. It would be something because they would be I think they would be a little more pesky but not probably challenging for the division at this point. And I think that I'm about to say something that probably nobody ever thought would be uttered, but Manny Machado sets the tone for the culture there.
Yeah.
For the better. Right? It's not anything that anybody would ever say about Machado for the most part throughout his career, but I think it's true. I think that he's matured a bit as a player and as a person. I think he still does what he does, and that's great. He's actually really good for baseball. I think the way he plays the game, but we've seen him in back-to-back seasons at some point get into Fernando Tatis Jr. We've seen him sort of be the guy who says, no, we're not doing that, or that's not how we do it. He's been caught on the hot mic, yelling at guys in the dugout. And so, interestingly enough, he's found his home with that organization, and he's really made that clubhouse kind of his own. And they play with that funk that he kind of has too. They play with that attitude and swagger. And they're just a bunch of really talented players over there. But I think that he is the sort of the heart. He's the heartbeat of what that roster can be. And so without him, I think they'd be more like the pesky sort of upstart organization as opposed to a legitimate contender.
Yeah, I think what I was going to say is, and I think for kind of in line with your point, is without Machado, the Padres would remind me more of the team the Dodgers saw in 2020. Yeah, they're like, okay, they're a little bit of a fringe playoff contender, but Dodgers are capable of sweep. And had that happened a second time in the playoffs or a third time, like I don't think that's a rivalry at that point. But yeah, Larry, that was a great question. And to your point about Machado kind of maturing a little bit, I was mentioned on our shows. I went to Wednesday's game with tickets with my wife, and I forgot who was that bad. It was somebody for the Dodgers, was left-handed hitter, and he checked his swing, and they appealed down to third base, and the umpire said no, he didn't go. And at that same time, like Machado signaled, like no, like he didn't. And when he saw the umpire agreed, he like shook his head and like gave him a nod of approval, like not sarcastically. He was like encouraging him. And I thought, I'm sure that has happened before. And it's just, unless you're at a game, you're not necessarily seeing that on TV, right? Because the camera goes to the umpire, not necessarily to the player. I just thought, oh, like that was kind of funny. And I think stuff like that builds a player some goodwill. Like if you can show an umpire, like, hey, like I'll recognize you when you're making a quote unquote right call. And so like, not articulating this very well, but it was just an interesting thing to see a player, because typically interactions between players and umpires are, hey, you got that call wrong, right? And they're at each other's throats type thing. So I just thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Larry, great super chat. That was a good discussion. It could be certainly pretty timely, depending if October kind of the playoff matchups shake out the way a lot of people think and maybe are concerned about. We have another super chat from 300 GJW. Says, really like the way the team came out tonight. Wish we had Glass now, but I like our chances. Yeah, I think what's interesting about these games now in September is, as much as, we've seen it in the past where the Dodgers or any team will clinch a division title under old roster rules, it would be every minor leaguer that was in the lineup the next day.
Yeah.
Now, you saw how the Dodgers are doing it. Will Smith got the night off. Mookie Betts came out early. The regulars are still having to play. Freddie Freeman obviously isn't with the team. Miguel Rojas also isn't with the team, but they're not on the injured list. So the Dodgers are actually a little shorthanded this weekend without those two guys as they try to get ready for the NLDS next week. But yeah, I agree. I didn't necessarily, I wasn't sure what to expect from the Dodgers tonight, just because of not only the celebration, but then having to travel. I mean, the logistics of everything was strange. Usually, I guess MLB figured it's a relatively short flight from LA to Denver, so they didn't have to give them an afternoon game Thursday. But yeah, and what about to the second point? Are you feeling any more optimistic about the Dodgers' odds right now than maybe you were a week or two ago?
Yeah, I was pretty down about it on Tuesday, and I'm still not. I'm glad that they've shown some fight. That I think winning that series was big. I think they were always going to win the division. Probably that odds were heavily in their favor, but I think for them just to say, you know what, like we need to get this monkey off our back. That is the Padres this season. And I think that series goes a long way to do that, at least in their minds. But this is always going to come down to pitching. It always is. And, we can say what we want about hitting with runners in scoring position and, all of that stuff with the offense, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and all of that stuff. And that's fine. And some of it is deserved, but it will always come down to your starting pitching, always. And if you don't have enough of it, it's really hard to continue to move through October relying simply on having to outslug guys because, you might only get one start that goes 6 innings and 1 run or something like that. And so they're up against it. There's no doubt about that. Their pitching staff might end up going into the playoffs being the least likely to dominate a postseason series. But, look, with that said, Flaherty and Yamamoto are both very capable of going 6 or 7 innings of shutout ball or 1-run ball or something like that. And if they're both able to put that kind of run together, then it really doesn't matter because you have the two guys at the front there. And sometimes that's all it takes for a run.
Yeah. And, oh man, I lost my train of thought. You mentioned the pitchers. Oh, what I was going to ask you is, does anybody come to mind? Did you hear from anybody that maybe the Dodgers would, because of baseball being just how it is, that the Dodgers would beat Dylan Cease and Walker Buehler would have a good start? Did anybody tell you that? Any predictions on that end?
Hey, you know what, man?
And you didn't disagree, so we can take this victory lap together. I'm fine.
Absolutely. My man Matthew over here was on top of that and said the tone will change if that happens, and it happened exactly the way you called it. And and the Buehler stuff too is probably too early to put the eggs in the basket, but I will say this, that he's building some confidence there. And even the start before, when the line ended up not being great, he said some things where like he believed it. Like, it's coming together. I'm finding it finally. We might not have believed it at the time. But I think that outing for him, again, like the team winning that series, I think for him personally, that start might be the start that really pushes him and says, okay, you know what? Here it is. Feels like I'm back now. And if he can give them something, he doesn't even have to be Cy Young contender Walker Buehler. He just has to be, solid. Then all of a sudden that rotation becomes a lot more formidable.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, we'll get into this with the NLDS rotation talk. I've put all my eggs in the October Buehler basket that he's back. It's the postseason, and he's I do believe that he has this, and he said it, this is a big game. Like I'm gonna kind of will my way into pitching better than normal. And in the past, that went from being very good to lights out, and I think now it's taking him from being inconsistent to average to serviceable, very good, even not very good, like I could give you a quality start type thing. And the Dodgers are certainly going to need it, but I keep teasing you guys. We're going to get to the NLDS rotation tonight, I promise, and we'll definitely dive into all that. Before we do, we've mentioned it, Shohei Ohtani, he's suddenly in the conversation for the Triple Crown after, he's put together one of the best months of baseball that I have ever seen, and no disrespect to a lot of the proverbial old timers, if you will, that played before I remember type thing. Before we kind of dive into some of the stats and stuff, what I first had this thought when Ohtani, when he did the 50-50 and you and Jeff went live after actually during the ninth inning, just because it was so exciting.
Yeah.
That game reminded me of a basketball player basically taking the game over and saying, like, we're not going to, and not that the Dodgers were ever necessarily going to lose to the Marlins because they blew them out, but basically a basketball player saying, we're not going to lose. And I feel like Ohtani has sort of continued that kind of, not mindset or approach, but like those results have carried on now for multiple weeks. And I know Barry Bonds has obviously had seasons that he's had, and he would get intentionally walked. I think the one difference here is if you intentionally walk Ohtani, there's a very real chance that in the next 2 to 3 pitches, he's about to be in scoring position. Where with Barry Bonds, especially in his late, when he was hitting all those home runs for the Giants, he wasn't the solo.
He wasn't running. Yeah.
Albert Pujols maybe comes to mind a little bit, but like, does it make sense when I'm like, from a basketball, I'm a basketball fan. I know you are as well. Like, this feels like the star player on the team, the Kobe Bryant, the Michael Jordan, the Shaqs, the LeBrons saying, you know what, give me the ball. Like, I'm taking over at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a fair analogy. I feel like he's changed the culture of the lineup, if that makes sense. I think that the last couple of years, we've seen that offense really press in the postseason, and things haven't worked out for them, and they've taken their fair share of the blame, I think, for the postseason failures. I think with him, it feels like the swing mechanics are so consistent, and he's going to go into the postseason on a run, right? August was fantastic. September has been unbelievable. And he's going to get into October, and I feel like guys like Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Max Muncy, those other guys, some of that pressure gets alleviated when it feels like you don't have to be that guy, right? Like, even though, they're going to come up with men on and all of that kind of stuff, high leverage situations and all of that. But it feels like he's really taken the mantle of, like, this is my lineup. This is my offense. I will carry us. Like you said, like the analogy you made, I will carry us. Get on my back and let's go. You guys just simply do your jobs. You don't even have to be Superman. Just do your jobs. I'll be that other guy. And when the offense has gotten rolling like that, we talked, earlier in the season when they were really playing well, we had talked about this a lot, where like, this offense is just so overwhelming. And if you're an opposing pitching staff, you blink and all of a sudden everything has just snowballed on you,
Mhm.
and your team's out of the game. And it feels like they're getting back to that a little bit right now. And if they do that at the right time, and like I said, they just get some decent starting pitching, who knows? Who knows?
That is, 2 weeks ago, I was in the camp of and like you, even as recently as this past Tuesday when they lost to the Padres on that triple, like not even that it was a triple play, but just losing that game and kind of seeing, I know there's been a lot of discussion on where the Dodgers flat, this and that, but sort of seeing a relatively kind of mundane, what I felt was a little bit of a mundane approach from them or show of emotion. I thought, I don't know if this team, like if they can do it, but I think I'm pretty sure I mentioned this at some point. I might have picked maybe in our bold prediction when we did our food show and ended it with like
Right.
bold predictions or like what has to go right. I think I might have said on that episode that basically if Otani just goes crazy, like if you could pick one thing, maybe it was like Otani go crazy and just carry them. And even then, like when I said it, I didn't expect it to be this. I mean, I thought hit like
Yeah.
5 home runs, not 10 in a week type thing. And we have some stats really quick. Let me just read some of these. He has 24 hits in his last 34 at bats. Last 8 games, 6 home runs, 20 RBIs, 8 stolen bases. Obviously, up to 54 home runs and 54 stolen bases this season. I mean, just a ridiculous. Any stat you want to list, any date you want to start and end it at, like, it's just a crazy run. And so, I'm with you. Like, I am sort of at the point of thinking, well, and Walker Buehler deserves some of this as well, because if they only had 2 starters and then the rest of a shaky rotation,
Yeah.
I still would be out. But I could kind of see, I think the way you were sort of I could kind of see the path again to how the Dodgers can get it done. And Otani obviously is at the center of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because Walker Buehler is he ends up being a really critical piece to this puzzle, because he gives them that semblance now of something really formidable there. And then, when you made that prediction about Otani, like you were saying, in my mind, it was like, that's not, no one's capable of that kind of run, right?
Right.
And then he goes August and September, and it's like, well, I was clearly wrong. Like, we knew that this guy was a fantastic player, and then he went August, September on us. And it's
Yep.
just been an absolutely joy to watch this guy play baseball and hit. And so, yeah, you're right. I think with him leading this offense, because I have a feeling that if he stays the way he doesn't even have to be this hot. He just, he can even cool down a bit and he'll still be totally fine. If he can lead that offense and that lineup in that way, and the other guys, it's going to be a little easier for them to fall in line behind him and do what they're supposed to do. You get that, and then you get Walker Buehler giving them a nice bookend third starter. I think they once again go into the playoffs as probably the best roster, top to bottom, in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that
Which
was
is,
not something I would have said maybe a week and a half
yeah.
ago after Bueller's last start.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how quickly things have changed. Real quick we'll put a bow on the triple crown stuff. Luis Ariz is still ahead of Otani in terms of batting average. The Mets the Mets lost tonight to the Brewers, which I'm fairly certain locks in the Padres as the top wild card team. So, and the Padres are also winning right now against the Diamondbacks as we're doing this. They're up 5-3 in the 7th. Assuming the Padres are locked into their wild card position, do you see a scenario where Luis Ariz ends up sitting the rest of the season to not lose the batting crown championship? We saw it with was it McNeil on the Mets 2 or 3 years ago, and that was he sat the last day of the season, and that
Yeah.
I hated that. Like, I don't consider him the real batting champion that season. Freddie won that in my eyes.
Yeah. That's weak sauce, man. Don't sit to protect your award. Like, I'm not a fan of that. If hey, if you know that the other guy who's chasing you is sitting that day, then all right, hey, it's fine,
Yeah.
take the day off. But
Okay.
if he's in the lineup and he's running you down, and then you decide to take the 0 for 0 and keep your average where it's at, that's Bush, man. That is Bush. And so if the Padres do that, I know Dodger fans will give them a lot of heat, right? But I think the way sort of the media landscape has shifted, he's going to catch heat from the national media too, I think, for sitting, especially with Shohei sitting or running him down, because also it's a guy who's trying to chase down the Triple Crown. And so if you sit to protect that, and let's say Shohei has a 2-for-3, with the walk kind of day or something like that, that's going to look really bad for the Padres.
Yeah, careful though with some of that. Your West Coast bias might be coming out. We're gonna draw some heat for that. All right, we have a couple more super chats before we move on to our next topic. Hawaiian Kira, she's looking ahead to the NLDS. She wants to know an MVP prediction, unexpected player that leads a team win. I'm not sure, Hawaiian Kira, if you want like an unexpected player to also be the NLDS MVP, which I don't think they don't formally recognize an NLDS MVP, right?
Yeah, I think they wait till the NLCS for that.
Yeah. So I guess
but we can still pick though. We can still pick one.
for our sake. I mean, I think obviously Ohtani's the easy choice, but I'll go a little bit of a curveball, which maybe pun intended. I'll go Yamamoto just because I think they're going to need a strong starting pitching performance.
I think in that short series for a pitcher to get it, he would have to be dominant and so we're talking like 7 shutout, 8 innings, 1 run, something like that. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, I would be all for Yamamoto being put in that position. I'll take Tommy Tanks.
Okay.
I think he's capable of getting hot for 2-3 games, and he does it in the NLDS, and all of a sudden he's capable of lighting up the scoreboard in a hurry. So yeah, I'll take Tommy.
Okay, and I saw some pushback. Yamamoto wasn't necessarily my unexpected player. It was more of who I thought could be the MVP. If I need to go unexpected, Laura's saying it. I'm picking Max Muncy. I think just a really kind of bad year for him. Obviously, the injury stuff. I think get him in the playoffs, and maybe he can get on a little bit of a heater in that short series. Our next super chat from Brandon says, I think show ends with 55-60. Just when I started to believe that 60-60 was within reach, he obviously had a bunch of hits against the Padres, but none of them went out of the park, unfortunately. So I thought he needed to get to Coors already at like 55-56 to have a shot at it.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying 60 home runs, 60 stolen bases wouldn't shock me. I think he ends up with 59 though. And let's see, home runs, he's at 54. Yeah, he hit one tonight, so he's at 54. I think he goes 56-59.
Okay. He's at 58 steals right now. 57.
57. He's 54-57 right now.
I think he gets one more bag, and then they're like, all right, we got this thing wrapped up. Chill out a little bit, and I think he hits one more out of Course.
Okay, there we go. All right, thank you everybody for being patient with us on those super chats. I know we typically try to get some a little bit faster than we did tonight. Next is you mentioned the Dodgers sort of having it wrapped up, and the NL West is clinched. Still to play for is the best record in baseball. The Yankees did lose tonight, so that's basically it's coming down to the Phillies and Dodgers. Dodgers their magic number for home field advantage through the World Series, and as you see here, it's a magic number or is it a tragic number? Because there's been a lot of debate over if the Dodgers should take the number 1 seed in the National League or quote unquote tank for second, which you could argue maybe the Phillies sort of did tonight with their performance against the Nationals. But the magic number is down to 1. So if the Dodgers win Saturday, they're going to finish with the best record in baseball, regardless of what happens Sunday. If the Phillies lose on Saturday, the Dodgers are going to finish with the best record in baseball, regardless of what happens Sunday. So it's coming to a head tomorrow.
Yeah, get the number 1 seed. It's just the smartest play. You let the chips fall where they may in terms of who you play. I think you go for that. You go for the top seed versus like trying to manipulate the schedule in what you might think is your favor.
Yeah, I've never, and kind of expanding on this, the whole concept of tanking, like in the NBA and the NFL, like,
yeah,
I understand that.
I didn't like that Lakers conversation last year either about, avoid the Nuggets and lose the playing game. Like that was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the minute like especially when it comes to playoff seeding specifically, if you start trying to manipulate it that's way too much. Like I just don't
You
I
you
don't agree
bring
with
in
that.
so much you bring in so many other things that could go wrong then. Like in the Lakers thing, right? Like lose the first play-in game and then play like Golden State. And it's like, okay, but in a one game, winner take all for everything, like you don't know that you're gonna beat that team. Like the Lakers weren't that good, right? And they might have missed the
Right.
playoffs altogether. The Dodgers are obviously a little bit of a different situation. They are, you know, I, I want to say, you could say arguably, but they're the best team in the National League. And so I don't think they need to do that. I really don't. And, if it ends up being the Padres, which I know a lot of people were saying that they should avoid them, then fine. Then they're going to have to beat them at some point anyway. And I think like if you can get them where you're able to set up your rotation to go at a team, then let's do that. Versus the alternative there. And again, like you think you're able to set up your pitching in a way that you feel confident in, and the offense is starting to hum. They should be able to beat San Diego. Like I don't, the season series be damned. Like we've seen teams get dominated. I think it happened last year with the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks, right? And the Dodgers lost to them in the playoffs. So like that regular season stuff is great for the regular season, but it doesn't matter once October starts.
Well, and it also happened in 2002 with the Dodgers and Padres specifically. The Dodgers dominated the regular season and then lost in the NLDS. And I think the other part of this too is one, it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion as much as people think it is that the Padres are going to emerge from that wild card series.
But I agree. Yeah.
Like, yes, they on one hand, actually, like watching them this week against the Dodgers, I wasn't overly impressed, to be honest. And it's not me trying to like kick dirt on San Diego or any sort of like I really wasn't. I know that they have the best record in the second half and this and that. Dodgers are, I think, four wins off that pace, so they have also been one of the better teams in baseball since the All-Star break. I didn't come away from that Padres series thinking, man, these guys really are world beaters, and the Dodgers got extremely lucky. And so to assume that it's a 3-game series, like if people are concerned about a short best of 5, what do you think can happen in a best of 3? Like that's even the lower seeded team, yeah. If they pull off an upset in game 1, all of a sudden like that could get flipped on its head completely. So this idea that if the Dodgers get the number 1 seed, they're definitely going to play the Padres and it's locked and this and that. Like 1, that's not true. 2, like you said, if it is, then so be it. The Dodgers have like the week off to line up their roster, their rotation, how they want to do things. And if you're so worried about the Padres, putting them on the other side of the bracket doesn't mean that they're going to lose either. Like they're probably better, if not just as good as those teams on that side as well. And so then if you set it up, in my opinion, so that then you're not necessarily facing the Padres until the NLCS, well, guess what? This team that you're worried about, now you have to beat them 4 times. Whereas I'm looking at it as the Dodgers, we've talked ourselves into kind of the path of how they can make this thing happen. The margin for error is still relatively thin. It's not, what it would be if they were completely healthy. So at that point, play them in the NLDS, only need 3 wins, and then move on.
Yeah, jump on them. And like I said, they've played out of their minds since the All-Star break they have. If it weren't for that, given what the Dodgers have done in the second half, we'd be like, this team's unbeatable. They're easily the best team in the league, right? Because of what the Dodgers have been great post All-Star break. It's just been overshadowed because the Padres have been able to close the gap in the division because they've played like 800 baseball or whatever it is. But no, yeah, the Dodgers I think are the better roster. Pitching is obviously what it is, and so they really are going to have to lean on that. But they're going to have to lean on it no matter what round we're in because Glasnow's not coming back. Gavin Stone's not coming back. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, oh, if we just get to the next series, then we'll have a full rotation. No, this is what they're riding with. And so better to get that team that you might not want to face early when your guys are rested at least and set up than later. And yeah, like I said, I think the Dodgers are still the better roster. Whoever it is, bring it. Like, you're going to have to go through the best teams anyway, or the teams who win anyway. And so, in my opinion, the Dodgers are the favorites to come out of the National League. Let's go.
Yep.
Let's ride.
Yeah, and so then at that point, you might as well have also home field advantage through not only the National League, but like we said, through the World Series, because at this point, the Phillies and Dodgers are guaranteed to have the best record in baseball. So it's whoever, like one of those two teams.
Absolutely. Yeah. And hepatitis C later, which is always a name that makes me laugh. This is a great comment. He says here, he or she says, teams have won with a worse rotation than this Dodgers team. And that's a factual statement. That is a true statement. Like, teams have gotten away with mediocre rotations and maybe dominant bullpens, dominant defense, or whatever, right? Some other combination. And the Dodgers have a good enough defense, a dominant offense, and a really good bullpen. I wouldn't call it elite, but it's really good when it's rested. And that could be enough to carry them, right? Like the Kansas City Royals went to 2 World Series with basically no offense, almost no starting pitching, elite defense, and elite bullpen pitching. And like, so there's different ways to do this stuff, but you do have to be able to get outs. And so, I think that comment is accurate. It's got to be a combination of something. And the Dodgers are in as good a position as anybody else in baseball, not just the National League, to do that.
Yeah, and I know that's something Blake has really been hitting on is, rotation is good enough, really good bullpen, offense and lineup.
Yeah.
You've seen what it is, and that, and I think what's maybe fueling some of the optimism, hope, whatever you want to call it, is you only have to look back to 1 year ago and Corey Seager and the Texas Rangers basically, hitting their way to a World Series title. So yeah, it certainly can be done. All right, we have a couple more super chats here. This one's from Zip Code Zero, says, other than Philadelphia, is anyone else a major threat? I mean, look, I just got done saying the Padres didn't wow me necessarily, but they are certainly good enough. It's not, the Dodgers pulled away in the third game of the series, but the middle game that they won was a close matchup. Even the series opener, like that triple play, was crazy. Like the Dodgers were also right there.
Yeah.
Like, so, those close matchups in the playoffs, unfortunately, crazy things happen, whether it's a missed call by an umpire or just a crazy bounce, like anything can happen. So, I mean, I would put I think the Padres and Phillies are the teams on the National League that probably concern me the most.
They all concern me. they do. They all concern me because there's the randomness of October baseball, right? Like, think of it this way: like in July and August, any bad team with a couple of right breaks and a good pitching performance or something like that can beat any other team in a 3-game series. And I know, NLDS and LCS, I know those aren't 3-game series, but my point is that when you only take that small of a sample size, let's say you take a work week, Monday through Friday, any team is capable of winning 3 of those games on any given week. Now, you play it out over the course of 6 months, then you'll start to see the scales shift where they should. But in that small a sample size, things can happen. So that means that, sure, Philadelphia might be best equipped, or San Diego might have the 2 best starters, or whatever you want to call it. But everyone in this position is a threat. Like, seriously, they just are. And especially when the Dodgers rotation looks like what it looks like because of the injuries. And that's not to say, I know I just said it's good enough. I still think that, but it's not like dominant like we thought it might be a couple of months ago.
Our other super chat is from Laura. She says, losing to the Padres would be, in all caps, miserable for years to come. That is the issue. Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. Like, if the Dodgers were to lose to the Padres in the postseason again, it certainly would not be ideal. I think I in maybe a sick way, that's sort of what makes sports fun, or kind of the high stakes in that regard of, not wanting to lose to, in this case, as we discussed earlier, because of that great question from Larry, kind of a proverbial rival.
Yeah.
And if you win that rivalry matchup, it's a little bit sweeter than if you played, the Brewers type thing. And yeah, that's what Tim G is saying. His comment is, but beating them would be awesome. So yeah, I do. It's high stakes poker, and that's coming from somebody who doesn't gamble at all. But I can recognize kind of the stress that entails, needing to face the Padres potentially in the playoffs again. I mean, do you feel strongly like one way or the other? Like, are you not so much of like to the point where, you would want the Dodgers to purposely lose to try to avoid the playoff matchup, but if you could if you had it your way, would you rather face the Padres or would you just not want to deal with them at all? Or the Diamondbacks for that matter as well. We could
Yeah.
let's say the NLDS.
I think that's a question that's easier to answer after the wild card series, because who looks beat up, like, and I know that's a little bit of a cop out answer. I know that, but if if the Padres win and they get through with as few games as possible, then they become a bigger threat because they also get to then set up a little bit, how they want their pitching to look and all of that stuff. So I look at it like I want the team that had the toughest time getting to the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And sometimes that might be, the Phillies. So, or it might be the Brewers, so, you don't know exactly how it's all going to play out. And so, would I rather face the Padres versus somebody else? It just all depends. It really does. Like, they don't scare me like, oh my God, that's the one team we can't face, or that they will beat us. Like, I don't see them like that. I don't think they're that good. Just even with the run, like, I don't think there's a team in baseball. It was the Dodgers until the pitching injuries, but I don't think there's a team in baseball now that is like, we're just going to run through everybody. Yeah. There's not that team right now.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, and this sort of ties into the last super chat that we had, and to your point of every team being dangerous in the playoffs. And I know our account, I think it's Blake who's running it, agreed with that. When the Padres played the Mets in the wild card series a couple years ago, the Mets were the higher seed. And going into that matchup, like you would have thought, Padres snuck into the playoffs, a little bit of a threat. You would have thought, hey, like the Dodgers don't want to see the Mets, right? And I remember we were doing a preview show because the Dodgers had the first round bye like they do now. And I said, if the Padres get through the Mets, they could end up being a dangerous team, because to me, that would have meant like the bottom of their lineup, which had been a weak point, like sort of woke up and all of a sudden they're a more complete team. So like that could work both ways, right? Like, again, like I was referencing earlier, there's all this discussion of avoid the Padres. Well, it's not a guarantee that they're going to get past the wild card series. Sure, they're probably going to be favored against whoever they play. How many times have the Dodgers been on that end of being the favorite team in the postseason series and losing it? So, if the lower seed that they end up playing, it's the Braves who, maybe the Braves sneak in, which, by the way, like having to play that doubleheader on Monday is just crazy. But if they get into the playoffs and they're hot and they upset the Padres, then what? What if they then upset the Dodgers? And then it would have been, should they, like it? The Padres then at that point would have been a moot point. So, it's there's only so much kind of you can't really it go to back to, like, I'm going all sorts of different tangents. Back to my point of you need to just play your games. Like, the Dodgers aren't going to try to purposely lose, and I think the Phillies have them beat on that sort of strategy anyway.
Yeah, right.
Another super chat from Zip Code Zero. Thank you for this one. Says Glasnow, Yamamoto, Shohei, Sasaki, Flaherty. How likely is this rotation next year? I think the biggest question mark is if Sasaki is actually going to get posted. I feel like that has gone back and forth. There's some belief that he does have a clause that he could get out of his contract and be posted this offseason. I've seen other reports saying no, like I forget what team he's pitching for right now, so I apologize, but they don't necessarily need to do it now. They can wait until he's older. So it's tough to say. I will say this is also asking about Flaherty, so it would assume that Flaherty gets re-signed as. I think the Flaherty thing, to me, I think a decent amount of it might come down to how he shows in the postseason.
I think so too. Yeah. I think to answer the question, I think the likeliness of this rotation being there in April is very low, like 5%. I think also, like, we don't know that Glasnow is even going to be available, in all honesty. The way things have sort of played out with that. And also Gavin Stone, we don't even know if he's going to be available. Like, those injuries feel serious, and we're not going to know the extent of them probably until, like, everyone reports to Camelback. Like, I have a feeling that's how this plays out. But Sasaki, I don't think he gets posted. And I'm with you. The Flaherty stuff, if he has a nice run, I think the Dodgers re-sign him. If he has a dominant run, I think he ends up elsewhere. And if he's bad, then I think the Dodgers maybe try to get him back on a cheap short deal.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so that's that. Thank you again, everybody, for those super chats. We appreciate those. Let's see. Our last planned topic for tonight before we get to your questions. We've been teasing it, the NLDS rotation. Dave Roberts told reporters today that basically in no particular order, that has not been set, or at least not publicly, is Jack Flaherty, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Walker Buehler, Landon Knack. No real surprises. Sort of with this, Dave Roberts did, though, reveal that Tony Gonsolin is not factoring into the Dodgers' plans for the NLDS, which is a change from how things had sort of been trending the last couple of weeks. Not only it went from, Gonsolin was looking at as a potential bullpen option, then to possibly starting, then to possibly pitching in this Rocky series. Now we sort of have worked backwards. Then they ended up ruling him out from pitching at all during the regular season. And now Gonsolin is off the table for the NLDS. Don't think it's from any sort of setback. My read on this, and Anthony, if you have a different take, then I'd love to hear it, is that this is more Walker Buehler's emergence into, he looks like he could be trusted to start the game 3.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it. I also think maybe they thought he isn't built up enough yet. And if they do bring him in, they want him to be able to get them at least, I would say, they want to count on him to say, give us 15 outs or something like that. Right. And so I think he'll continue to throw to hitters and, sim games and stuff like that, and maybe build himself up. So that way, if they get through the NLDS, he becomes a real option then in the NLCS. That's sort of how I see this playing. I don't think he's off the table for October. I just think they've taken him off the table for the first series.
Yeah, and that's an important clarification. It is for the NLDS. Obviously, Dave Roberts is not necessarily, if he had been asked and pressed, what about future rounds, he probably would have said, yeah, we'll reevaluate, or no, he's definitely out. But that didn't come. And so it does appear that Gonsolin could be in the equation if the Dodgers were to advance. The other sort of possible wrinkle or change that could come with the rotation is if Landon Knack is used in a game 4, or hey, maybe he's game 3 instead of Buehler for some reason, that it's possible the Dodgers also use an opener in front of him, which we might see as soon as Sunday when Knack starts. So they might do kind of a dry run, if you will. But Knack also did do
dress
that.
Rehearsal.
Dress rehearsal. There you go. That's a better way of putting it. Knack did it at least once, maybe even twice earlier this season, where he followed an opener. So that's kind of where things stand with the rotation. Would you expect if Knack does get a start in the NLDS that he's probably following an opener more so than getting the traditional start?
Yeah, my call earlier when we thought that the Catman was an option, Gonsolin, was that it could be a piggyback situation. But now that they've pulled him from that consideration, I think then, you're looking at maybe an opener and then him being the guy after that. I feel like now that's probably the most likely scenario.
Yeah. So that's where things stand with the rotation. Again, the Dodgers, they have 2 more games left in the regular season, Saturday and then Sunday afternoon. And then game 1 of the NLDS is a week from this Saturday. So it would be October 5th. So that's kind of where things stand. Now we're going to turn it over to you guys. If you have questions for Anthony and I, we'll answer them. We'll spend maybe about 10 or so minutes doing that. If you want to make sure yours gets answered, we will prioritize super chats. Otherwise, we're going to scroll through as many of these as we can. As a reminder, if you could just start it with the word question in all caps, that makes it easier for us to pick out. And Anthony, as we're waiting for those to come in, I had a question. I'm completely drawing a blank now. I forgot totally where I was going with it. Let's see. At this point in time, consider, Yamamoto is making his final start of the regular season on Saturday. If you needed to choose right now, which you don't, but for the sake of this exercise, we're going to ask you to, who would you start in game 1 of the NLD, knowing that the Dodgers are in the NLDS and not having to play, a wild card series? You can line things up how you want. You going with Yamamoto or Flaherty?
I think I'm going with Flaherty. for game 1.
Is that because the potential to come back on short rest if things go wrong, or just what's the thinking there?
I think they don't want to throw, if I'm not mistaken, I think they don't want to throw Yamamoto twice in a series, given the days in between.
It's more so, I think, because like in the World Series, I think he would be able to if he started game 1 of the DS. So it's more just making sure that there's enough days of rest.
Yeah, so I think that's one factor. I think the second factor is now Yamamoto. I'm going to say something, but Yamamoto has proven that he can handle some bright lights, like we saw what he did in Yankee Stadium on Sunday Night Baseball. But I also think that they'd like to put a veteran out there first, and not put that on Yamamoto to be like, okay, if this goes bad, you put us in a corner here. And so I think they give the ball to Flaherty, a guy who's been around the block, and then they let Yamamoto come back off of that. And then, if needed, Flaherty can come back.
Yeah. All right. Majority of the chat was in full agreement with you, Flaherty. Okay, we have some good questions here that I did see, but we're going to get to a super chat first from Saki Bomb. Says, I know they signed Shohei as a two-way. Are we worried about all our pitching issues with him losing both his arm and bat after seeing what he does when he's just a bat? Fair question, I think. I think obviously with all the pitching injuries, the Dodgers, and not just the Dodgers, but we've discussed it, Major League Baseball, just as a whole, sport industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Sure, there's certainly some concern, but I think that's also a tough way. Like there's no way you're going to sell Ohtani on, hey, you can't pitch because we're worried about what might happen. Like there's unfortunately, there's no guarantee that he won't get hurt. There's no guarantee that he will get hurt. It's just part of sports. And I just don't see that being on the table right now.
Yeah, I don't either. You're not going to sell any player on, in case this might happen if you do this. Like, you're not going to sell any of them on that. But also, I think that, I know it's been a while since we've seen him pitch. I think we forget, and nobody watches the Angels, so that's fair that we forgot this. But he was an all-star caliber starting pitcher.
Yeah,
it wasn't like he was a guy who was like a 3.7 ERA and gave you 145 innings or something like that, and he was just good. He was like front end number 1, number 2 type arm, and so I think that understanding that tells you, like, no, they're not keeping this guy off the mound once he's ready to go. Like, he is a big time starting pitcher.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, they might not be in a position to with the different pitchers who, as you mentioned, may
go there, but
may or may not be available come opening day. So, Saki Bomb, thank you for the question. All right, let's try and get through some of these from the chat. We'll try not to be so long-winded. That way, we can answer as many as possible. Jonathan wants to know if it's too early to talk about free agent stuff. I'm going to answer this one easily. Yes, it is. Playoffs haven't even started, so we're not getting to free agency just yet. Sort of with that, Javier Mora wants to know if Teoscar is getting extended. I'd be shocked at this point. I thought maybe in early September it was going to come down, late August type thing, but sort of never came around to it. There weren't even really reports of discussions being had. So it doesn't mean that they didn't talk about it behind the scenes, but it doesn't appear like anything got too close.
He's going to test the market for sure. He's had too good a season. I think he would want to stay here. I think he's already said that. But he's going to want to know his value before he settles on something if he comes back to the Dodgers. So, like, he's not going to sell himself short, and nor should he.
Yeah. Let's see. This question's from Rod. Wants to know if there's any possibility Kershaw makes the postseason roster. At least for the NLDS, it doesn't appear so. Dave Roberts said basically all but officially ruled him out. He said Kershaw's weeks away from being in position of basically being able to pitch. Kershaw's toe is causing some significant issues. He stopped throwing bullpen sessions because he's not able to fully push off the mound, which then was causing him to overcompensate. And he didn't get into specifics, and Dave Roberts didn't provide them either. But basically, it was affecting other parts of his body. If you want to read between the lines, my guess is that was the shoulder and or back. And so they had to kind of stop that. And to me, I think at this, if you the minute I knew, and look, maybe it's possible Kershaw returns in the NLCS, but the minute I knew there was trouble was when 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, he showed up with a new haircut. Because if you've watched Clayton Kershaw, he arrives to spring training with a pretty clean short cut, and then basically lets his hair grow out through the entire year. And go look at almost, I would say, pretty much 99% of his pictures in the playoffs. He's got his long hair coming out of his cap. He cut it short again, and I thought, oh, that's not like him. Something's off here. And sure enough, here we are with Dave Roberts saying, and I say that sort of tongue in cheek, but yeah, I mean, NLDS doesn't look like that. Would you hold out any hope for the NLCS if the Dodgers are able to advance?
No, I think he's done.
It's unfortunate. Not looking very optimistic for him there. Obi-Wan says, do you guys think Freddie is back in the lineup for the NLDS? So yeah, if you missed it, Freeman left Thursday's game with a sprained right ankle. He's not with the team in Colorado. He stayed home to receive some treatment. Every report from Freddie Freeman, from Dave Roberts, is that he's going to be ready for game one, which is in a little bit over a week. So I anticipate him in the lineup. I think the question is just going to be how much of the swelling and discomfort were they able to get out of the ankle.
Yeah. And I think that's why they're doing this. It's just, I think you know me, I am the most distrustful person of medical reports with this organization, but I really do think this is just a tweak. And they're like, you know what, let's just keep you off of it, give you treatment, make sure you're 100%, as close to 100% as possible. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about this. Totally confident he'll be there when the playoffs start.
Yeah. All right. Noisy Ninja 91 wants to know, is there a reason the Dodgers kept running Bobby out there instead of Kasparius? My eye test tells me Kasparius is better, but I have stigmatism, so who knows? Yeah, so this was coming up as Bobby Miller kept struggling through his starts. And is there any sort of specific reason you see that maybe they stuck with Miller instead of giving Kasparius a chance?
Yeah. A lot of teams do this. They had a lot of stock in Bobby Miller. They still do. And they were really trying to capture what he had last year, because they really thought that if he could, then he was going to be a major piece of this rotation, not only during the regular season, but in October as well. And so I don't think that they viewed Kasparius like that. I know they didn't, even if he would have performed fine and been a nice little surprise, they didn't see him like that. They saw Bobby Miller as a potential anchor piece for this rotation as long as he was healthy and performing, and they kept trying to get him there. I think that's why they kept running him out. They were gonna run him out there until they couldn't anymore, and then he gave them all the reasons that they needed to say, okay, you know what, you're not pitching anymore for us. But yeah, that's the reason why they really saw him, and they still do. They saw him as a big part of this pitching staff going forward. He just is not producing.
Yep. I agree. This isn't a question, but Don Kim saying he got Panda Express today. If you haven't tuned into any of our shows recently, Panda Express for some reason is a polarizing topic, which I don't understand at all. So Don Kim, I'm sure you enjoyed your Panda Express. I know I would have if I went there. Jackie's wants to piggyback on the Kershaw question. If the Dodgers win the World Series or not, is he playing next year? This is something that I kind of started thinking about after the latest update from Dave Roberts. I'm not sure. I don't know. And it's tough because I was in the camp of assuming Kershaw was healthy and pitching in the playoffs and the Dodgers were to win the World Series, I thought he would sail off into the sunset. If the Dodgers win the World Series, but he's not able to contribute, I'm not really sure.
I don't think it counts for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Because of how he is and how he views things, I'm not sure if he would take that and want to go out that way.
Here's my prediction. He comes back next year, regardless of what the Dodgers do, because I don't think this is how he wants to end his Dodgers career. If he were pitching and they won the World Series, I think he would have either retired or gone to the Rangers. And if he was pitching and they lost the World Series, I think he would have given it one more go if he thought his body was up for it. The situation we're in now, I don't think he wants to end the Dodger portion of his career this way. And that might mean he's never a Ranger. And he just plays his entire career with the Dodgers. But yeah, I think this doesn't leave a great taste in his mouth that he's not going to be able to pitch. And if they win and he's not, he's not on these rosters, I think he does come back because he's like, you know what? I want to be part of a back-to-back situation.
Yeah, and I think what makes it interesting too, and people are commenting, he's also close to 3,000
The 3,000
strikeouts.
strikeouts, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's another that could be another factor. I think too, and he did reiterate, or not reiterate, he did say, for what it's worth, that he's not been told that surgery is needed for his bone spur and his toe issue, that it's just a matter of time. And that's what I think makes this so confusing. And to your point, like, we're not that they necessarily owe it to us, but we're not, with Kershaw specifically, we're not going to get the full details, the full scope of what's going on with his toe from Dave Roberts. He might try to, but also you then have to wonder how accurate it is, just because of some of the missteps we've had this season, it seemed like. And so Dave did say, when the injury first happened after Kershaw's start against the Diamondbacks, he said he's been pitching through it for multiple years. And so I'm not familiar with bone spur, I've had sprained ankles and stuff like that. I don't know, like, what has changed. Like, my question to a medical personnel would be, okay, like, what could change with a bone spur that now it's causing so much issue? Because Kershaw's never missed time like this before,
Right.
with a toe. It's been his back or his shoulder, and like, they can't lie about those IL stints unless a back thing also overlapped with his toe, and they said, hey, we're just going to go with the back so we don't disclose the toe, which is possible. But that's what's really throwing me for a loop, is like, okay, is this like more serious than it was before, or is the bone spur in a bad
Yeah,
spot?
and
Like,
I'm not a doctor, but I do believe that bone spurs can move.
yeah,
I think, and maybe it's moved to a place that is a lot more painful. I don't know, but I think he comes back next year. I think he's back.
okay, there you go. There you
Also,
have it.
you've seen what the Dodgers look like as a team, and he has seen what the Rangers have done this year. And if the value for him is still in trying to chase another World Series, his best chance is going to be back with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's answer a few more here before we close out the show tonight. Alex Renteria wants to know, can the Dodgers afford Soto? Also, isn't Soto a Boris client? Yes, they can afford Soto. It doesn't mean that they will. Yes, he is a Boris client, which might be the biggest impediment to the Dodgers signing Juan Soto than any sort of financial terms. Just because it's not very much love lost there between those two parties. Related to that, Godfrey has a question. Wants to know, could the Dodgers bring back Bellinger, who is another Boris client, or Rooker instead of Teo? I love his attitude, but his defense isn't good. If you're worried about Teoscar's defense, then I don't think Brent Rooker is the guy for you. I'm fairly certain he's pretty much a DH only. I'd have to double check that. I get him mixed up with, I think it's Rooker who is pretty much only DH. Bellinger, I don't see him opting out. But if he were to hit the open market, do you see any sort of reunion there?
I don't think so. I think they would have pushed to make it happen already. Bought low on him, but I'm with you. I don't think he's leaving Chicago. Also, I don't think you have to worry about Teoscar's defense. Like, he's playing left field. I think they've got their center field situation solidified for next season with Edman. I assume they chase the shortstop. If that doesn't work out, then they maybe do chase a defensive-minded outfielder, or they hope that Outman rebounds, and then they put Edman at short. So I think they have a couple of different options there, different paths they can go. I don't think Bellinger's at the end of any of them, though.
Yeah, and sorry I was reading some of those chats, so I apologize. Did you mention Pajes?
I did not.
So that could be an option in left field if something were to happen with Teoscar if he's not back. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, his defense is what it is. I don't think there's been anything necessarily egregious. There have been maybe a handful of plays where I thought, somebody with a little bit more range might make that catch. But to Teoscar, he's also made a few, sliding catches, running catches.
He's cut some guys down too. I mean, look, you're going to live with the defense that he gives you when he gives you what he's giving you in his stat line on the other side, period.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you guys have any final questions, throw them in here quickly. We'll answer them. If not, I think Anthony and I will probably sign off for the night. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of people don't want Bellinger back. I think One, I don't think he's opting out with his Cubs deal. Two, I think if he does, it would be for maybe not necessarily more like AAV dollars, but a longer term. Like you'd be opting out for financial reasons at that point.
Purely, yeah.
I don't see the Dodgers. Like if the Dodgers were to sign him, I think they would insist on something that's a little bit more team friendly type thing. All right. So Tim G, here's a good question. He wants, what do we want to see from Yamamoto tomorrow? So yeah, his start on Saturday against the Rockies is going to be
don't get hurt.
His last one. Yeah, that's front of mind.
That's it.
Aside from that, I would like to see him complete 5 innings. Honestly, he could give up 5 runs in those 5 innings for all I care. I think it's more of just the exercise of
sure.
getting up and down. Like I know his pitch count has sort of been built because he wasn't particularly efficient his last time out, but still the Dodgers are very big on the actual exercise of sitting down, the 4 or 5 times type thing. So for me, yes, health is first and foremost. Second is let's see 5 innings.
Yeah, I'm good with that. And it's in Colorado, so it is what it is in terms of what the final line might look like. But yeah, I'd like to see him get through 5. Hopefully he's efficient. But above all else, just get out of there and be healthy.
Yeah, definitely. At this point, we saw it, unfortunately, with Freddie Freeman, and honestly, his injury is more mild than what I thought it was when it first happened. But yeah, these last 2 days, as much as the Dodgers still can, and we discussed it earlier, so to some people, they have the best record in baseball to play for. To others, losing is winning. But the reality is there's however you want to slice it, there's 2 games that they need to get through before they can sort of reset and look ahead to October. And it's kind of crazy to think we've gone basically a full baseball season and simultaneously felt long, but also very quick at the same time. I don't know if you feel the same way.
It kind of always works that way with this team.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're going to end it there. If anything, significant or crazy happens tomorrow, we'll see who's available. We could do kind of an impromptu live show. If not, then Blake and Scott will be back on with you guys Sunday night. That'll be kind of the finale of the regular season, which will be interesting to see if the wild card picture on the National League side has taken a little bit more shape and some clarity there. I don't have a full grasp on the scenarios off the top of my head right now, but I do know that it is possible that maybe the Mets and Braves don't have to play their doubleheader on Monday, depending on what happens this weekend. But as of now, I think that they certainly are still going to have to. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. If you're on YouTube, please be sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and all that good stuff. Once again, that's Anthony. I'm Matthew, and we'll see you next time.